This video is about factoring trinomials with coefficients. Okay, so last time we did factoring trinomials without coefficients, without something in front of that x value. And this time we're going to be talking about doing it with something in front of it, with a coefficient. So a coefficient is a number that's attached to the variable. So, if it was like 3x squared, the 3 in that 3x squared is our coefficient. So the question is, how do I factor a trinomial if it's got a coefficient? It does make it a little more complicated. So here's the deal. This is going to look like gobbledygook, and yes, it is a little bit complicated, but if you stick with it, it's really not too bad. It's going to challenge your number sense a little bit, but that's okay. So what we're going to be doing is listing factors that caused ax and cx to multiply to my original equation's coefficient. So numbers that two numbers I can multiply, right, to get my coefficient. Then I'm going to list factors that cause b and d to multiply to make c. This does require some kind of plugging and checking. I don't know if I'm going to end up doing that just because, I'm practiced on this. But it's okay to make mistakes and get the wrong answer. Eventually, you will get it right. So I'm going to show you two different ways to do this. Get to my correct window here. So our first question is going to be 3x squared minus 2x minus 5. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to think, all right, what numbers can I multiply together to get a positive 3? I don't have a lot of options, right? It's really just 3 and 1, or 3x and x in this case. So I'm going to write a 3x and an x. Now I'm going to think about options for negative 5. Two numbers that multiply together to get negative 5. So that would be negative 5 and 1, or 5 and negative 1. So I'm going to go with my first set, which was negative 5 and 1. Now, with luck, I can arrange these numbers to where my first number ends up matching this, right? My last number ends up matching this, and the middle term ends up being matching here. And I think this will work the way it is. So let me just kind of group together what we have. The way that I normally do this is I group together the first term here and the first term here, and then the first term here, well, the second term and the second term. So I would get, let's see, 3x minus 5, and then x plus 1. And I can double check my work. This is the part that's kind of a bummer. That does take some time. So 3x times x, that's 3x squared. 3x times 1 will be plus 3x. Negative 5 times x will be minus 5x. And negative 5 times 1 will be negative 5. So my first term is good, they match. Last term is good, they match. 3 minus 5, negative 2, that matches. So that's definitely going to be my solution. There is another way you can do this. I'm going to go ahead and throw it out there. It's called factoring by grouping. It takes a little more number sense than this, but it is a viable option. I'm going to take the exact same problem, and I'm going to look at it in a bit of a different way. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to try to break this into two pieces. And what I want to do is essentially make those two pieces have a part that I can factor out and it matches. So I'm going to think of two numbers that I can add or subtract together to make this negative 2. And in this case, I think it's going to be 3 and 5. So let me show you what I'm talking about here. I can take this equation and break it up into 3x squared plus 3x. And then we're going to have also negative 5x minus 5. And you're like, Mr. Clark, you can't do that. Well, 3 minus 5 is negative 2. So I haven't done anything except kind of change the way that this looks. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to see if I can factor some stuff out. So for my first term, I can factor out a 3x, which leaves me with 3x times x is 3x squared, and 3x times 1 is 3x. And on the other end, I'm going to factor out a 5. I'm going to factor out a 5, and I get an x plus 1. Now, the reason I said this takes number sense is because you have to see what's going on in these parentheses has to match for this to work. And I saw that I could factor that 5 out and get the x plus 1. And I saw that I could factor this 3x out and get the x plus 1. So just like before, I'm going to put my pieces together. My 3x and my 5 go together. 3x minus 5. And the stuff that's in the parentheses for both, that's my other term. X plus 1. So you can see I got the same solution by a different method. Use whichever method is more comfortable for you. I personally find the first method easier, but I did want to show you that there is a different method, factoring by grouping, and I'm sure if you Googled it, that would come up too. It's not wrong, it's just a little bit different. So let's look at the next problem. 5x squared minus x minus 4. So I'm going to use my favorite method, the shorter one, and I'm going to look at this and say, okay, what two numbers can I multiply together to make a 5? It's pretty simple, a 5 and a 1. So I'm going to write the 5x and x, because 5x times x is 5x squared. Then I'm going to look at my last term, that negative 4. What numbers can I multiply together to get a negative 4? And let's see. I can do negative 1 and 4, or negative 4 and 1. So let's do the first one. So I said 4 and negative 1. So 5x times x, 5x squared. 4 times negative 1, negative 4. Let's see if it happens to work out this way. So I'm going to do my 5x plus 4. I'm grouping these two together, and then my x minus 1, grouping these two together. I'm going to double check. 5x times x is 5x squared. So far, so good. 5x times negative 1 will be minus 5x. 4 times x will be 4x. And then 4 times negative 1 is minus 4. Cool. 5x squared matches. Negative 4 matches. Negative 5x plus 4x. Sweet. Negative x. Got it on the first try. I'm getting good at this. So that means that this is definitely going to be our factored solution. Not too bad. And finally, let's look at this example. 2x squared minus 9x plus 7. I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to think in my head, all right, Mr. Clark, what are two numbers I can multiply together that make 2? I think it's pretty obviously 2 and 1. So 2x and 1x. Two numbers that multiply together to make a positive 7. Either negative 7 and negative 1, or 7 and 1. I get duh, right? So I said negative 7, negative 1. Now the reason that negative 7 and negative 1 popped into my head before 7 and 1 did was because of this negative sign. That made me think that there's probably a negative in my problem. If it was positive 7 and positive 1, then I'd have a positive in the middle, and it doesn't look like that would work. So I'm going to go ahead and default to what I thought in the first place, just for good measure. I also thought 7 and 1 in that order as opposed to 1 and 7, because if I did it the other way, I'm going to be ending up with some relatively large numbers, right? I'm going to get something bigger than 9 in the middle. So I'm going to group my 2x minus 7, let's see here, and my x minus 1. 2x times x is 2x squared. So far, so good. 2x minus 1 is negative 2x. Negative 7 times x is minus 7x. And negative 7 times 1 will be positive 7. Okay? 2x squared matches. 7 matches. Negative 2 minus 7, negative 9. Hey! It worked on the first try. Not too bad. So what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to reverse this just to show you what happens if you make a mistake, because I feel like I haven't really shown you what that looks like. So let's say that I was trying negative 1 times negative 7, for instance. So I've got the right factors, we know because we've already solved it, but in the wrong order. And I get 2x minus 1 and x minus 7. So I'm going to show you what happens if you have even the right factors in the wrong order. So 2x times x, 2x squared, good start. 2x times negative 7, we get negative 14x. You can already tell something's kind of wonky here, right? Negative 1 times x will be minus 1 more x, and then negative 1 times negative 7 is positive 7. So in this case, the 2x squared, that matches. And the 7, that matches. But in the middle, that's a negative 15. So if you've got a situation where the A term works and the C term works, but your B is kind of weird, try flipping stuff around and see if that works. Or possibly try changing your signs. Sometimes it really is just a process of elimination and trial and error.